I'm Tom Long, and I'm a resident at Box Tree Court in West Yorkshire, and your host for today. But what are we talking about? We're talking about something that really affects each and every one of us, and something that you actually have got an input into. It's called local scheme budgeting. With budget planning meetings coming up, this vlog couldn't be more apt because we want to explore what they're for, how they work, and most importantly, how residents can get involved and really influence the decisions. Joining me today, I have a fellow resident, Ian Devereux, who's from the Garden of England down in Kent, along with Richard Lawton, our Head of Retirement Charges, and Tracy Jones, Head of Operational Development. So welcome everyone.
Good
Morning, Tom.
Hello.
Richard, as usual, perhaps we could start with you and deal with the basics. Very simply, what is a local scheme budgeting or whatever, and why do we do it?
Yeah, so local scheme budgeting, it's about how Housing 21 are going to spend your money basically for the upcoming service charge year, and that runs from April to March each year. This is essentially the other side of the statement process that we discussed in our last vlog. So this is setting the budgets, but it covers the same things like cleaning, gardening, communal repairs, utility costs, all those sorts of things that appear on your statements. And these meetings are basically to provide residents with an opportunity to see how their service charges are going to be spent and help shape the future of spending at the court. So what we're trying to get to, it's sort of, again, we're looking at transparency, being open with you, what we're planning, and just making sure that budget reflects the priorities of the scheme and the residents.
So we're really completing the circle, aren't we? We dealt with the year-end statement last time. Now we're saying that's what we've spent. Now we're looking at what we're going to spend in the future. So Tracy, if that's the case, what does a typical budget planning meeting look like? And actually, who gets involved?
Yeah, so we go through the current year's budget with the residents. We look at what's been spent, and then we discuss the plans for the following year, like you say, Tom, so closing that cycle, really. We also talk about surplus, which is money left over when spending is under budget. And we look at things like deficits as well, which are unresolved issues or repairs that might need to be factored into future costs. It's normally chaired by managers and the operational teams on site in person, and allows residents to ask questions, raise concerns, and also suggest any changes there as well.
That's really interesting. So everybody gets involved. Ian, you've attended these meetings before, but I think also at King Edward Court, yours are slightly different. So what's your experience been like?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. As you mentioned in the introduction, I live down in Herne Bay in Kent, and along with Oldham, I believe, our schemes operate under something called a PFI scheme. That's a private finance initiative. PFI was a way for the government, or in our case, local authorities, to pay for bigger public projects, infrastructure projects, using private money and then spreading the cost out over something like 30 years in our case, rather than paying one huge upfront cost of public money to build the schemes. What this means in practice, though, is that many of our service charge items are controlled by the PFI contract, and it makes changes somewhat slower and sometimes a lot more cumbersome because of the impact of that contract. It also can complicate the service charges budgets because a single line item might be controlled by multiple conditions within the PFI contract, and that gives you all sorts of complications in trying to understand what it is that we're actually paying for. So one of the reasons I'm really interested in this is to understand how service charges are managed in the other schemes and what we can learn for that for Kent and Oldham, and bring that back to our specific schemes. And on the other hand, it also gives us some advantages in that the provision of some of the things like our shop, our hairdressers and restaurants are all governed by those PFI contracts. Of course, that also means that we have to pay for those services through those service charges. But it's really interesting to understand how it's done in the other schemes and what lessons we can learn in both directions.
So we really have two completely different schemes here. One for the majority of courts, which is the standard service charge, and the private finance initiatives, which apply to both King Edward Court and Oldham as well. So we heard there that, Richard, that the PFI costs are set, charges are set. So how do residents, and this is probably where you come in, Richard, how do residents influence decisions in these meetings?
Yeah, that's right. So simply by attending, really, and speaking up and having your say in those local decision making. So again, what we're trying to do, we're looking for transparency. We don't want, the first thing that residents know about these costs is when your letter drops in February time. We're trying to bring this process forward to make everybody aware, and we do generally want to hear from residents if there's a strong feeling about the garden maintenance or reviewing the window cleaner service or things like that. We'll do our best to reflect that in the budget, so it's a collaborative process.
So it really is, as you say, Richard, a collaborative process. The residents do have a major part to play in setting what the budget is. So, Tracy, perhaps you could probably tell us how residents can prepare for that meeting, and more importantly, I suppose, how they can actually get involved since they have so much influence.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. So I think speaking to the local manager is key. Checking notice boards and newsletters for meeting dates. You should receive notification of the meeting date at least a couple of weeks before, at a time convenient to residents. And then really residents starting to think about what improvements you'd like to see. You can also meet with other residents beforehand, bring shared ideas to the meeting, which is always a good idea. Always good to think about how satisfied you've been with your local contractors. So things like your gardening, your window cleaning, your gritting, all of that type of thing. And if they would be your choice next year, if they've satisfied the contract and the specification requirements for you at your scheme, your manager should be able to provide the 3 quotes from these local contractors and allow residents to make the ultimate decision of who you want to provide those services on site. So really influencing those decisions made by residents. And don't worry if you're not confident with numbers, because that's what we're there for on the day. We're there to explain everything clearly for you.
Oh, thanks, Tracy. That sounds superb, because I do know a lot of residents do worry about numbers and think, oh, it's something to do with money. I can't understand that. I also understand there's some good literature out there too that'll make the process more understandable.
Oh, Tom, good point. There is some good literature out there. So we've got our easy guide to understanding your rents and service charge. So we would encourage people to have a read through this. It really does explain. Also, viewing your end of year statements, getting an idea at what the costs have been at your service and what you're currently paying for is a good idea. And then don't forget at the end of your meeting, don't forget to complete that short survey as well for us, because this is how it tells us what we can do better and is really important to us and our network group in terms of taking things forwards.
But then there's always that massive excuse, isn't there, that I can't attend the meeting. So what facilities are there to allow for that?
Yeah, so we've got a full briefing note now that's provided to managers, which really explains what they're going to talk about on the day. And they also use this to provide their notes for all residents as well. So we would expect a copy of this to be provided for every resident to be able to read through exactly what's happened on the day.
So really, everything is taken care of. If you can't attend, there is a way of finding out just what's happened and still influencing what the budget is going to look like. So before we wrap up this session, does anybody have any final thoughts? Ian?
Yeah, I think Tracy's right in some of the things she said, and especially the key thing for me is if you don't understand, ask. Even within a system like PFI, which is quite controlled, by questioning, we have been able to gradually change and influence the services and what goes into the service charges. And it's a slow process, but if you don't ask, you never know, you never find out.
Thank you, Ian. That's very wise. Richard?
Yeah, I would just say simply that we're here to listen and participate in those meetings, and we can work together and get your budget all sorted.
That's the key, isn't it, Richard? Everybody is listening, everybody is working together. So, Tracy, have you had any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's your home, your voice should count. Let's make budgeting something we can do with residents, not for them.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I was just thinking there about that final thing that you finished with there, Tracy. It's with residents, not for them. And I think we should remember that. Budget planning meetings are a great opportunity to make sure that your scheme reflects your needs and your priorities. And the only way to do that is to get involved, ask questions. If you don't understand the answer, ask a supplementary question and then help us build better communities together. So until next time, please take care.
Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.